reasoning and deductive reasoning, and then can you guys read the words that are down here? I know they're kind of small. Okay, so we have hypothesis, conjecture, if then, we didn't really talk about, but you guys can figure it out. Conclusion, scientific, assumption, which we didn't really talk about, and observations. So let's start with one that we know, hypothesis. Where does that go? Is it inductive or deductive? Nope, that's the wrong one. Okay. How about conjecture? Inductive, good. So we can remember them because it's HD, and then the other one is inductive. How about if then? What do you guys think about if then? Why? And I'll tell you an example. Like, if it rains, the ground will be wet.
That's a fact.
That's a fact, right? If then is usually going to be deductive because it's saying if this fact happens, then this is what the conclusion will be. So it's usually going to be deductive. Okay. Let's do observations. Where do those go? Inductive. Good job, guys. And assumption? We talked about it, but what do you think? Inductive. Assumption means you're assuming something, so you're probably not using facts. Okay? Scientific, or no, wait on that. Let's do conclusion first. Where does conclusion go? It's both, right? You make a conclusion using either kind of reasoning, right? So a conjecture is a conclusion, and a hypothesis is a conclusion. So shouldn't it go with both? Okay, so there's actually two of them. Okay, and then the last one, scientific. Which one do we use in science? Okay, we do use deductive reasoning for sure. But we also use inductive. Like if I give you a table with numbers and you figure out what the next numbers are, that's inductive, but it's still science or math. So that could be either one. Okay, are there any questions on that? Yes, if there's a plan. All right, so the next thing, on your quiz that you guys are about to take, you're going to have 2 essay questions. And so or 3 essay questions, I'm sorry, but I'm going to kind of go over 2 of them with you guys just so that, really? Just so that you guys have an idea of how to answer them. And I'm going to pause this for a second. What's the difference between a conjecture and a hypothesis? Just real briefly. Conjecture between, or the difference, see this is what happened the last time during first period. Okay, the difference between a conjecture and a hypothesis. Just give me some ideas. What's different?
Conjecture and inductive.
Good. Inductive?
Deductive.
Right. Let me write that. Hold on. So hypothesis is facts. What is conjecture going to be based on? Assumptions. What else?
Patterns.
Well, okay. So assumptions, patterns. What else? Observations, right? Okay. If I asked you guys to tell me what's the same between them, what would you tell me? They're both a conclusion. They're both scientific. Good. I can't write them anymore, but you guys get what I'm saying, right? Okay. I don't know what's up with this. All right, and then the second one that's a little trickier. Do we use conjectures in math, or should we? And why or why not? Kind of a hard question. Have we ever used a conjecture in math? In this class? We've never done inductive reasoning in this class? Yeah, when we have those patterns, like the table, and you're coming up with the next number, that's conjecture, right? So, do you think that a mathematician, like, do you think Einstein walked around and did conjectures, or do you think he tried to keep it to deductive reasoning? You think he? Okay, why deductive? Why do you think you want to stick to deductive? Because it's factual, and then there's one other thing, and it has to do with this word, counterexample. What does counterexample mean? Say it again. Yeah, you can prove why it's wrong. And what does it prove wrong? A conjecture or a hypothesis? Conjecture. So how would this change your answer about why conjectures should be avoided in math? Well, how could you use counterexample to explain why Einstein didn't use conjectures if you could help it? Nobody has. Okay, it doesn't show any facts, and then the big thing, and this is what you guys want to focus on when you're writing this, it only takes one single counterexample to prove an entire conjecture wrong. So if Einstein were to sit there and spend years working on a single, math thought, and then one person came along and gave one example to prove it was wrong, then all of that was a waste of time, right? So that's why conjectures, we use them, but once you start getting into real math, we avoid them. Okay, we try to generalize them. So let's look at this just to review, and we'll see how that's important, what I just said. What would be, if I gave you 5, what would be the next number? 19. And we know it's 19 because what did we do? We're just adding 3, right? So did we just do inductive or deductive reasoning? We made a conjecture. We followed a pattern. It was inductive. Okay? But let's say that I asked you guys to tell me what happens at 531. Then what? Yeah. If you were to sit here, you could count all the way up to 531, and nobody's going to stop you. But that would be a huge waste of your time, right? Using inductive reasoning to find this would be a terrible idea. So we want to use deductive reasoning at this point. And how do we do that? What do we start with? Good. Okay? That's awesome. It's PowerPoint, I think, that does this. All right, so how do I start? Okay, the 3 represents what? And the slope, or what's the other word I told you guys? Rate. Remember, slope and rate. So we put, I'm just going to write it right now. We put a 3 here, and then what do I do with the rest of it? Okay. Could I use this point if I wanted to?
Yeah.
Yeah, I could use the 313 if I wanted to, but this is usually easier because it's smaller numbers. But it doesn't matter which one you take. So let's say we take the 1 and I put it in for x. And where do I put that 7? Y. And what happens to b? Do we know b? No. Okay. So that's what we're trying to figure out. So we put plus b. 3 times 1 is 3. What do I do to both sides to get the b by itself? Subtract 3. Subtract. Because we're not multiplying. So 7 minus 3 is 4. So your b is 4. And then if my question on the test said this, that's what your question will look like. What number goes here? 3. This is your slope. And what number goes here? 4. Which we figured out here. So your answer will have a y and an x in it. You're only changing these 2 things. The only time you change the y and the x is because you're trying to figure out what the b is. Does that make sense? Okay. Are there any questions before we start the quiz? Yeah. I just went over half of it. I hope that you guys are okay.
How much questions?
There's 6 questions. Each question is worth 20 points, which means that you only need to get 5 questions correct and you have 100. If you get 100, your name goes on a little colored piece of paper and it goes up there on the wall. All you have to get is 5. Obviously do all 6 in case one of them is wrong, but you don't need to have all 6 right. Yeah.
So, if we fail the quiz, right, we get to take.
You can take a quiz or a test again for half credit on top of what you got. Okay, any other questions?